Thank you. Welcome everyone to have me in your homes, I guess, or in your private offices. I'm really happy to be here. I'm imagining here speaking to a great crowd with all really enthusiastic, and you might have already heard about Fabulous, or maybe not, but that's no problem. We'll dive into that right now. So what I want to show you in this talk is what is Fabulous, how do you develop in Fabulous, and how to get started if you are interested. Now, I want to really thank these sponsors for making this event possible, because this means I can show you how this thing and how this stuff works. Now, before we dive into Fabulous, I want to quickly address the elephant in the room. And that elephant would be, of course, F#. Now, Fabulous is a way how you can build functional front-end applications. And because it's you build on F#, I just want to show you, maybe you've already dabbled a bit in F#, or maybe you've heard things about F#. So for me, the main takeaways for F#, or why I really like developing in F# when I do, is there are no nulls. So there are no null pointer exceptions in F#. I mean, yes, you can force to run into null pointer exceptions, but generally you don't have to worry about those. The next thing is immutability. Now, immutability means you can't change a variable. This is a really useful thing when you have multiple processes doing stuff, or when you have asynchronous stuff going on, which in these days is more and more common to do stuff or to implement work like that. Another thing that I really like is declarative programming. Now, declarative programming in C# you might know if you've developed using LINQ. So you don't write a for loop and then go through stuff, but you are mainly just doing what you want to do in your code, and you're on your way. And that's something that I really like to do, because for me, it's a lot more readable, and I tell the computer what I want from it and not how it has to do it. Another great thing for me for F# is it's actually based on .NET. And with .NET, I mean, of course, .NET Core, .NET Framework, and the new .NET 5. So I can use all the stuff that I already know and love and just get on with my everyday business life. So if you've heard things about F# beforehand, you might have heard it's really great for scientific things. What I'd like to think of is F# is really great for blobs, boring line of business applications, or FLOBs, fun line of business applications. I actually don't know if those exist, but let's just pretend they do, and so they're great fun. So F# is a general language because it's based on .NET Framework. It has some differences, and you might see them during this talk. So let's go on with it. Fabulous. So Fabulous is based on F#, and it's using the MVU framework, the model view update. We'll see a bit of that, and it works with Xamarin.Forms. In theory, Fabulous could also work with different UI frameworks, but these days it's mainly focused onto Xamarin.Forms, and so you can write in a different way your Xamarin.Forms apps. Now, I just said Xamarin.Forms, and some of you might be wondering, so if it's just Xamarin.Forms but different, why not just use Xamarin.Forms? I mean, you said, after all, dear Mark, it's just .NET. So let's have a look at how we could actually write a middle-of-the-run middle-of-the-run Xamarin.Forms application, but using F#. So I have taken this example from Jim Bennett. He used to be very active in the Xamarin space. These days, I think he's doing more showing kids how they can get excited with development software. So that's something really cool. I put the link at the bottom of the slide. I will share these slides later on. So if you're interested into how you could teach your kids some programming, I would stalk him out on GitHub and see what he's up to. So back to this project. What we have here is a standard Xamarin.Forms application, which is running on Android and iOS. And we also have the Xamarin.Forms basic setup of an application. But now, if we have a look at how the view model is implemented, you will see it looks a bit different, but not all that much. So one thing that jumps out is it's white space sensitive, and I know there's a big discussion if this is good or bad, but I don't mind. It might be my Swissness, but I don't mind. Another thing that you can see here is something I pointed out before is actually that the text here, we've got mutable. Okay, so this means even though F# is immutable by default, we can override it to be more object-oriented. So we can change a variable if we want to, but we have to tell it, or we have to declare it as a mutable state. Now, some people might go like, oh my God, does this mean functional programmers hate this stuff? It's like, no, they don't. And this is actually, I think, a really strong case why F# is a good language, because you can use constructs like these. But generally speaking, there is a reason why immutability is the primary choice. And so if you tend up to use all your variables in mutable state, you're probably not writing the functional way, and then you probably will not get the benefits of using a functional first language. Now, what we see down here is actually how the command is implemented. Now, we don't use any helper MVVM frameworks here. So this is actually the implementation of the iCommand interface, straightforward. And what I really like about this is you can actually see how you can inline implement this interface. I didn't have to open up a different class and implement iCommand and then make my own command version and then inherit from that, but I could actually just do it right here. So a lot of us these days, we actually never write these iCommands anymore. If some of you have developed WPF beforehand or before you use an MVVM framework, you actually have to do this all the time. Now, Xamarin.Forms comes with a helper for this, but I just wanted to show you this is like one of the strong sides of using a tool like F#. Down here, we can see our members, how we would do them. And this is how a text that changes. So what we see is we got some button, we got some text that changes once we seem to press on it. Okay. So let's see how this thing actually runs. If I now press F5, I made a little recording. You can see the application starts up. There's nothing really scary going on here. We got this giant tap me button. If we tap it, we can see the text has changed. So this is how you would implement a Xamarin.Forms app using F#, how you would do it today using C#, just as I already said, in a different language. Okay, now what we saw here is F# can actually do OO programming, but it is a functional first language. The same could be said about C#. C# can do functional programming, but it is an OO programming language first. So there's this little swap going on there. And since F# is a functional language first, some people that like to do F#, they would like to do it a more functional way. So if we look at Xamarin.Forms, it's perfectly suited towards C# and doing OO programming, but it's not really how you would do it functionally. And that's where this fabulous thing comes in. And Fabulous is built on top of the MVU pattern. And the MVU pattern is the functional way how we can do these MV star, MVVM, MVC, MVP patterns. So they all got some similarity, but they are a bit different. And I would like to show you how this framework actually differs from, let's say, an MVVM. So if we look at the MVVM, how that's built up, I'm not going into details here. We got the view, we can do bindings, and the bindings, they are properties on our view model, and they're executed. We got the commands going on, and that's how MVVM works. And we got the models. And models is just like, it can be a POCO, but it can also be a service. So there's all the rest of the application is then in the model layer. Now, if we look at MVU in comparison, it's more like a cycle state. So we have the model, and the model informs the view how it should render itself. And then if something changes on the view, like I press a button, I then make a message to the update function, which changes the model or updates the state of the app, which then is again passed along to the view, which will render itself accordingly. So the core difference that we have here is that the changes, or how something changes in your app, is very strongly controlled in the MVU pattern. You only can do it in the update method, and it's done in a way that it's immutable. So you have no changes going on, no side effects going on. So if you've got like two buttons that you can click and they can make a race condition, the update method is always nice and sequentially, so you don't get any race conditions. The commands, they will be processed one after another. So that's MVU. Now let's go on to Fabulous. yeah, let's be fabulous, or better said, fabulous functional frontends. Now, getting started, it's leaned on the .NET Core way. So you can, if you've got .NET Core installed and the Visual Studio for mobile development or Visual Studio for Mac, you can then install the templates from Fabulous, as stated on this slide here. And you can then go over to your favorite terminal or console and then write in .NET New Fabulous XF app, and then you give it the name. And then what will be created is this app, which we see here. And this is like the basic template app. Now, if you're starting out with Fabulous, this app has got a lot of helpers in there how you would do certain scenarios. So what the app actually is, it's a very simple counter app. So you can increment something, you can decrement the value, we can put it on a timer so it counts up, and we can change the step sizes, so how much it will be incremented each and every time. And then we can adjust again with manual steps, and we can reset it back to its original state. And this is what this Hello World app of Fabulous is actually doing. So what's going under the hood? Before we go there, let's see. Okay, what we generated is a basic Android and iOS app, which we just have seen. Now I'm showing you here a sample from a Windows platform, and some people then always scream like, hey, why no UWP? So the reason why no UWP is UWP does not really support F# the last time I checked. So you can do it, but there's certain limitations. So what you usually end up doing is you write your UWP app in C#, the starter project, which will then call the app of the Xamarin.Forms project, and then it will just run. So you can do it, but I could now ask for a raise of hands how many people are doing UWP, and then make the joke, haha, nearly no one. Now, I like UWP. I think it's got a great stuff coming along with the WinUI updates, so I'm looking forward to the changes there. But that's why there is no UWP here, but you can add it. It's actually in the template, so you can add different platforms. You could also add a Linux, a macOS, and then so it's, I think they're on most platforms that Xamarin.Forms supports today. So that's for the platforms. And up here, we have our .NET Standard project. And what's a bit different is we only just got one file. So usually when you generate your Xamarin.Forms app, you get at least the app XAML thing, and you get a page, and then you usually start adding a view model if you're into if you're doing MVVM, and you're on your way. And here we actually only got one file. So let's have a closer look at this one file, what we have here. Now, I've told you before, the Fabulous framework is based on the MVU principle. So what we have here is the model. Now, this model is a record. Maybe you have seen it in C#9. So this is how you would develop a record in F#. It's basically a POCO. So we could make class new and then have a count property, a step property, and a timer on property. They're read only, of course. It's F# after all, but you get it. It's basically a class definition done in a lot fewer lines, if you ask me. Now, the next thing that we usually do is, so this model will be passed onto the view, and this view method generates the view code. So every time something changes, the entire view will actually be generated in here. Now, there will not always be a redraw of this view on the visual tree. You can think of it a bit like a shadow DOM, as you might know it from some web frameworks. So we say, hey, this is the state that the view should be on, and then the Fabulous framework applies that state and checks where are the changes that have to be made. Otherwise, this would be a very, very inefficient approach. But like this, you don't have to think that you're always redrawing the UI. This is just how it should be drawn, and then the Fabulous framework will make the actual application later on. The view model receives a model, so that's the state of the app. So every time something updates, the view will always draw the entire UI based on the state which is current. And we also have a dispatch. Dispatch is to invoke those commands. We'll see them later on a bit more in action. Now, when we dispatch something, so if we hit the increment or decrement button, what will happen is a command will be invoked, and the update method will receive that command and then process it accordingly. we can see up here the messages which are defined. So we got the increment button, decrement, the reset step, how large we want to do it, and all the other actions. So what's really interesting if you think about MVU is every change that you can do in your app has to be defined in this message type. Now, this is a bit of a special construct. This is called a union type. You can think of it a bit as enums on steroids. I won't go too deep into this, but what we have here is we have all the different types that we can do. And what's the difference between enums is that we can actually say set step is not just an enum value, it's actually of type int or of type bool. So we can actually even give values to the state change that we want to apply. We could even put in objects or new records, so that's all open for us. But the thing is, all these messages, they have to be redefined. This thing does not have to be named message. You can name it whatever you want, but this is the basic setup, how you would write a fabulous app using the MVU pattern. Now, if you've never done F# before, and maybe never have done Fabulous before, this can all be a bit confusing. So how I like to think of the Fabulous framework is everything is driven from the model and not the view. If we think about Xamarin.Forms, we always have the view or the page, and then you have the view model attached on top, and that calls into different services. Here we actually always drive our change from the model. So the model always represents the entire state that is currently in our app. All state changes are defined with messages. So whenever we want to change that global state of the app, like increment something, decrement something, also navigating somewhere, we will have to have a command or a defined message that tells the update method, hey, I now want to navigate onto my about page, for example. And we only have a single place of change for updates. So if we think by MVVM, an update will just update the property somewhere. Here, we actually always have a nice way how this can be done. Now, other frameworks, you can't do this yet in Fabulous. What you can actually do is by always having state changes with messages, what you can do is you can record those state changes. And if you now have an error, you can just go back in time, or again, back to the state until you have the error. So everything comes extremely reproducible because we actually only make state changes via messages. And that's something really cool. I know other frameworks can do this, also based on F#. I think Fable actually supports this, and it's mind-blowing once you see it. It's really cool. And another thing, it's actually all based on Xamarin.Forms. So that's all really well. Now, I was asked before if I could do any Spanish, and no, I can't do any Spanish, but what I can do is I can use Google Translate to make this. And since Christmas is around the corner, I think Grumpy Santa is not really happy with the UI I have been showing you so far. So let's change that. So how does Fabulous actually look like if we have to also make something that does not just work and maybe less brittle, but because we got these defined state changes, but also is pleasing to the user that actually has to use the app. So how can we do these things in style? Now, one way how you can do it out of the box with Fabulous is you can use CSS. Now, I know in the Xamarin space, this is a huge debate if you want to use CSS for this, but you could use CSS for all your styles and still use the coded approach, as you've seen before, how you can do this. So I'm not really strong with CSS, so I've never done this myself. Another thing that you actually can do is use XAML. And whenever you say XAML and you got coded UI, I always think about coded UI versus XAML, and it sometimes looks like this when I look at people that are discussing it. So it's a hot topic. So you got like these two camps, one goal, making an awesome UI. And what I now want to show you is how we can use the coded UI approach from Fabulous to make a really nice looking UI. Okay, so I'll quickly head over to a demo for this. And for this, I have to change my screen. Yep, we still see it. Okay. And I also have to change my other screen. So what we have here is an app that I've prepared beforehand. And I'll just quickly compile this so we can have a wait.
Sorry,
we got here.
Can you zoom a bit more the code?
A bit more.
Please. Yeah.
Sure.
Pretty cool. Thank you.
Sure. I still have to figure out how to get that warning away. If anybody knows, I'll be really grateful. So come on, go away. I don't really want to see you. Okay, so what we have here is I've got the app. So this is more or less the app CS. It would be called app.fs, of course. File extensions change when you change languages. So we got here the model. And what I want to do is I want to make it a simple login form. So I got the username, the password. I got the state if it's logged in or not. And I got some error text if something is not good. I will have the following commands that I can set off. So I can make a login. I can create an account. I got something that updates when the username changes. So that's when the user types in the username, and also when the password changes. And these are of type string. Okay. Here I initialize my model. So this is like when the app starts up and we never really define the model. I'll say, hey, this is your initial model. And then the app will then be on its way. Now, right now, this is how the app is looking when it's running. So it looks pretty blank right now. Now, I have defined down here some very simple controls that we'll build out during this demo. And what I could now do is I could now add this control here, stop the debugging process, and then go again back in, and yeah, you get the gist. But wouldn't it be cool if you could have like live updates or a hot reload? And we actually have some hotness. So for this, what I did is I opened up this folder here in my terminal, and I can then enter this command, and it's probably quite small, but I'll put it after this also into, I'll send you the instructions for this. It's .NET folders, --watch, --send. And if I press this, what it will do is it will start a file watcher in here. And if I now change this and I now save this, what it will do in the backend, it detected a change, it will compile it, and it's sending it to the webhook, and we can see it appears here on the right side. So we've got live updates with Fabulous. So that's cool. So we can also go ahead and just enable all of our controls, saving it, and it gets quicker. So the first time the compilation is a bit slower. Once you've done that, it's actually a bit more responsive. But yeah, this is our basic thing that we now want to do. So we got the username, the password, we got the user feedback, the login, the authenticate. I've put in this nice material design. I like it. Sue me for it. And so one thing that makes a UI instantly better is some nice images. So let's just go ahead and add this background image to this thing. Now, this image is actually here in the resources. So, oops, forgot to comma. See, IntelliSense works. So, typing also would work if you. Okay, so now, so this image I already put into the app. So if I would be doing this on the fly and I would add the image now while showing you this, I would have to restart the entire app. But everything that I change up here in the .NET Standard project, gets loaded. I think you're pretty used to this concept if you've worked with hot reload and hot restart. So this is how this looks. And now what we want to do, sorry about that. Now what we want to do is make these entries look a bit nicer, okay? And to do that, what I will do is I'll cheat a bit. So I'll go up here and I will just add them. I'll just paste them in and then run through the code because the time is ticking. Okay, so what I'm now making here is I'm making the view entry. So I'm making the same thing as down here, but I've given it a few more entries. So one thing that we'll paste in is the placeholder text. So this is here, the username, then the text. So this is when I start typing something in, the state of that. I got the text changed action. So I'm registering to the event when something changes, and we can see how it is down here. And this debounce is a really nice method whenever you got changes, but you don't want to fire every time a little change happens. So if the user is typing his name, you could wait until something happens, and this you can do with the debounce. So it waits 250 milliseconds until no change happens. Then I will invoke this action. This is actually, you can think of this as a lambda function. And then because I would like if I type into here my secret password 123, I would like that this is actually not visible while typing. Okay, so we want to be good citizens, so I can easily enable this with the property on the input by setting its password to true. Okay. I got here some layout options and all that. And that's how I want to do my entry. Now I go back down here and I can now say, hey, make entry. So I'm invoking this function, which will give me back my entry. And I can now go here and say, hey, this is a username. And now I have to pass in the model username. And in here, I will create a lambda function. So this is how you create lambdas in F#. A bit different, but work exactly the same as you would expect them. And here I say, hey, the username has changed. And then I give with it the new text value of the event. So here I pass in the argument, and then I say, hey, this is the new text value. And then I still have to, and this is actually already it. No, I'm still missing one. And then there's if this is a password or not. This is no password. This is the username. We're OK with it. And if I now save this, we can see the new control is here. Not so a bit more visually pleasing, I think, but that's pretty much it. So if I now go ahead and copy this line, I will now go in and say, okay, now I want this to be the password, and I can say, hey, this is not when the username has changed, but when the password has changed. And of course, I want this to be true because I don't no longer want people peeking at me while I'm entering my password, and it's here. So if I now enter in here and I go into here and I'll say, secret 123, we can see it's hidden away. This is what we expected. We reused a lot of the code, so the styling is the same. So if I now think I want to have a different color for the text, I could do that in one space, and it would be adjusting. And of course, you can do this as you know probably already doing for when you do stars. So we could make a file where all our stars are, and then reuse those colors from there. Theming and all that can be done. Okay, so now we have got our user input, but these buttons, they're still doing nothing. So let's go and implement that login button. I'll again just copy and paste the code in here to save us some time. So I'll make again a function for this, and I'll just call it a primary button function. So what I might want to have this style in here where I have primary buttons and secondary buttons. And so I could now just define this style once for this button. I pass in the text that should be displayed and the commands that should be executed. And then I can go back down here and I can now insert the make primary button. I give it the text. I give it, again, a lambda function. Copy and paste only works if you do it properly. And then we would see here, we now have a button. And I can now enable this, and we can now press save. And you can see it's now a lot nicer to look at. I could do the same for the secondary button. So I'll make a new function up here where I got a different styling, a bit less in your face, a bit more don't click me, a bit more click the primary button. So I can go down here and I'll just copy again this over. It's here. And if I save this, if I save this properly, we can see again the user input will update. I've got a problem somewhere. Oh, you look actually good. Something is not good. Something is not good. Do you have an indentation problem? The letter is not good. Oh my, what did I do? I copy and pasted wrong. How did I copy and paste wrong? Okay. So this is an indentation problem probably that I'm having right here. Yeah, missing another one of those. So now if I save, you can now see the button is now updated. Still, not a lot is happening. So what I actually now would like to do is once I enter something into here, I would like to get some feedback. And this is where we now have the placeholder of the label. So I will then define again a way how we can make an error text. And even though I'm showing you this all in one file, F# is perfectly fine in using multiple files. But it is easier to demonstrate this using only one file. So here, enough by one thingy going on. Okay, so now this is the label that we'll be using. So we got an error text in here, and we'll just make it red. and we will only display it if we actually got an error text to display. Simple as that. We could probably go on and do some even more extravagant styling with that. And now if I copy this over, the make error text, I'll just, in the model, I've got the error text, this model I've shown you before, and if I now save this, it will be now regenerated. And I'll just quickly remove this form here because we no longer really need it. And if I now go ahead and enter foo and try to log in, we'll see something is wrong. And what I also saw is someone actually made a copy and paste error while using this here. We want to hear this file here. So when this reloads, what you will notice is it always resets. So if I now put in again foo, I'll now enter the secret password that only I know. Here, no, bar, of course. And we can see beautiful styling goes a long way until you have to start over again or from the beginning. But this is how you can develop these fabulous apps. I hope I could give you a feel of how that could be done. So heading over again back to the desktop. The other side. Let's see. Okay, so this was the demo that I wanted to show you. So one thing that stood out is fabulous. You can do really nice interactive development. You can make your code. You can actually even, like if you think about hot reload, you can change your XAML, but you cannot really change the C# behind. I'm really like, I'm so hurting sometimes. Like you go, I just have to make these tiny itsy change in the view model and it doesn't really go. And then you have to restart again. And you can do it here. It's really nice, but you will lose your state. That's maybe a bit the downside. You can create reusable UI I think it's quite a nice way. So you can make functions, you could split up those functions into classes or modules and then just reuse them. So you can really componentize your UI and just reuse them. You can make good looking UIs. I know I'm no designer. I know someone with a great design background probably would have made this login screen pop out even better than I can, but yeah, I thought it was better than the initial implementation. So at least that, I hope it does going for it. And the other thing is, I hope you could see, is often it's just based on Xamarin.Forms. So the button controller has the commands, it's got the texts. I know it's not Pascal case, it's more camel case, but apart from, other than that, it's pretty much the same as you have already known it. What this style also lends it really nicely is, and that's something how I like to structure my UI, is like this atomic-based design. So you can make small components, and you can put together molecules, and organisms, and templates, and entire pages. So you could do this. So you could then strap together more functions and then make richer UI templates like that. And you can do that the same way as I've did these simple components. You could then make them up. Another thing that I just have to stress is the life update really loves the coded UI. So right now you can't do this approach while using XAML. You could use XAML with Fabulous. There's nothing hindering you there, but it works best if you use the coded UI approach. And now some of you might be thinking, hey, what about Shell? What about Visual Material? Or what about all my other favorite Xamarin features? Are they in there? And the answer is oftentimes yes. So the Fabulous team always has to be on par, or they try to always be on par with the Xamarin.Forms framework. Right now it's on 4.8, so it's the latest release. That's really nice. You can, if it's not, it's open source, so I'm sure they would be really glad if you give them a hand. And for the other stuff, I mean, I always like to think it's just .NET. So all my favorite NuGet packages, like the Xamarin Essentials ones, they are actually there. So there's nothing hindering me from taking the Xamarin Essentials approach and just putting them in. Now, if we think about the Xamarin Community Toolkit, which I know that Javier and my good friend Gerald, sorry about that, Gerald, will be presenting afterwards. You have to check that out. There need to be some bindings there present so you can actually dock to them, but there are instructions on the website of the Fabulous framework how you can do that. Again, now, if you think, hey, this is really cool, I want to start out, I did that. Fabulous actually got me really going with F#. Then suddenly I knew, like, well, this looks all really cool, but how do I actually get started with F#? And then you go Googling, and then you suddenly see these crazy names popping up, like functor and currying, and of course the monad, and all the things have to be a monad and stuff like that. And then my next reaction was like, holy fucking shit, I might not be intelligent enough for that. And don't stress if that happens to you. I generally like to give this advice: learn design patterns after you learn a language. I'm pretty sure you did not take the Gang of Four book and looked at that and then thought, okay, I've now read that, I'll now start to learn a programming language that uses OO. No, usually you start out with the OO language and then you slowly evolve towards that. So you can read patterns that are more functional based, and those are some of the names I just dropped before, but you can use F# without knowing them really greatly. So back to the original question, how do you get started? So one book I really like to recommend is by Isaac Abraham. He takes like the perspective of a C# developer and then slowly brings you along and shows you some concepts. And I think it teaches you enough to, after this, you'll be able to bring yourself into more trouble, which I think is always a great starting point, and then you can go further. There's also some free resources, the docs from Microsoft Online, and there's also F# for Fun Profit, which are free, and you can also go through them. But if you're C# dev and you can spare the cash for this book, I can highly recommend it, and not only because Isaac is a really nice guy. So some key takeaways that I just want to give, or I hope you took away too, is F# is not scary. It's just your friendly functional first .NET language that you have at your disposal, and that actually probably already runs in the IDE you have set up. Model view update is a different take on this MVE star things, and it really simplifies this state handling. So you define how the states can change in your app, and with that, you are in control of those, and you will have less race conditions and everything. And since Fabulous is based on Xamarin.Forms, you can run it pretty much anywhere that Fabulous is running. And yeah, with that, have a fabulous day. Thank you very much for your time. I usually always introduce myself after the presentation because I always guess you're here for the topic and not for me. So my name is Mark Allibone. I'm from Switzerland. I work for a company called Ray Technology. We're heavily into the industrial IoT space. We also do some custom development. I do a lot of mobile development. I also do some industrial IoT development, obviously. And you can reach me on Twitter. So if you've got any questions after or the day after, which often happens to me, please don't hesitate to reach out to me on Twitter. I'll also be sure that I will share with you the slide deck and the sample code on Twitter, so you can then check it out there. If you want to hear me more regularly, or one of the speakers that comes up after me is I'm doing a podcast, Null Pointers IO, with Gerald and Stephen Davisson. So you might know those, so please check it out. There are also some links in here, F#. So the first one is for the Fabulous repository, and the other one is for F# for Fun Profit. And the last one is my blog, which I consider to be mobile friendly. And with that, thank you again to our sponsors.
Thank you very much, Mark. I think, is there any questions? If any,
so yeah, I'm checking the chat
in Spanish.
But cannot see any questions. Yeah, if you want to ask in Spanish or English or whatever you want, we will translate. So now it's the
I have a question for Mark. Right, I think you in the past are working the MVVM approach and C#, right? Mm-hmm. Like another Xamarin developer. So what do you think are related for the change? I mean, it's do you have a better performance in F# or Fabulous, or I think it's substantially?
Well, so I mean, you can bring performance to a halt in pretty much every language I have seen. So one thing that stands out when you use this MVU approach is if you manage to make the update method really compute intensive, like these changes, or even if you don't really change anything, it still tells the framework, hey, I changed everything, you will have a really, really bad performance. If you use it the way it is intended to be used, I don't think the user will notice any lag in the performance. And there's been a lot of work that has already gone into assuring that this performance actually can keep up. So I don't have any performance metrics comparing a MVVM or MVU style in execution runtime.
Yeah. I relate with the performance like a developer more than the performance in the machine.
Yeah, so that's a good point. So what I've seen is generally you write less code doing this. So that's I think something nice. And the other thing is, I mean, if you know F#, you'll be quite quick in F#. There's a lot of nice things built into F#, like how you make these data models and stuff like that. So I think there's something to check out there if you haven't done so already. And if you like the functional style like I do, I can do it in C#. I do a lot of C# during my day job, but I also really like to do this F# based approach. So definitely check it out.
You use F# in production?
Yes, we have some F# apps in production.
And it's a lot of complicated to look up F# developer, right?
Well, I think F# has got a very bad name of being very complicated, and I must say, for me, reading the book from Isaac, it really showed me like, no, it's actually just a bit different. And then there are some additional patterns that you can learn. And I think a lot of people, they always come with like, oh, you have to learn first all the patterns, and then only you can start using F#. And that's not true. I think it's actually quite a good language to pick up for beginners too.
Yep. And thank you for the recommendation from the book, because I need to learn for sharp. Is the to-do list is in the
come to the dark side. Come to the dark side.
Yeah.
You are not alone, because just reading the comments from the different chats on Twitch and YouTube, there are some comments like, hey, thank you very, very much, Mark. This is the first time I get in touch with F#, and it was a very interesting presentation. So, and there are some other people saying that are too new in F# to do very interesting questions. So I think that has been a very interesting introduction to F#, Fabulous, and the basic concepts about MVU. So thanks so much, Mark, for all your time and for participating in the MonkeyConf 2020. It's a pleasure to have you here. And
thank you for having me. It was a blast.
I hope the next year is the presential of the hearing in Spain.
Yeah, that would be great. That would be great.
We'll see.
Really bummed this is online. Okay.
Thank you, Mark.
We'll see.
Have a good day.
Thank you, Mark.
Bye.
Have a good day.